feels like everybody nowadays has their own opinions about COVID-19 and what we need to be doing to stop the spread of COVID-19. We've heard from Pastor Greg Locke, who was just flat outraged that he was asked to wear a mask in a Dunkin' Donuts. We've heard from Paul and Morgan, who were hearing from Tucker Carlson, none of whom felt that it was their duty to wear a mask to protect other people around them. And now, today, we have yet another familiar face from our past on this channel, Allen Parr. We have Allen Parr with a new video from the beginning of August. Should churches reopen during a pandemic? Is this faith or foolishness? Now, I've not watched this video. I don't tend to watch these videos before I start responding to them, so today we're going to find out whether this man can break the chain. However, there is very, very slim possibility in my mind of him actually doing the right thing with the platform that he has, because this man has 442,000 subscribers on YouTube. So let's see what kind of message Allen Parr is giving those people about COVID-19.
Should churches reopen during a pandemic? Is this faith or could it be foolishness? That's coming up today on The Beat. Hey, my friend, welcome back to The Beat. My name is Allen Parr. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time here, it's a pleasure. And as my way of saying thank you to you, if you want to learn more about the Bible, click the link in the description box below. You'll get an ebook emailed to you. If you enjoy this video,
I was going to say stop shilling, but I guess the ebook is free, so I guess shill away. If you want to read his book, I'll put the link to his video in the description.
Consider subscribing, hit that little bell notification so you won't miss a beat. Okay.
Yeah, do all that for me too. Why not?
Okay, so in response to this issue of should a church reopen during a pandemic, there have been a couple of different responses. Megachurch pastor Andy Stanley has basically come out and said, I am suspending all in-person services for the year 2020. Check.
Which at this point, with the way things are going, is pretty much the responsible way to handle this sort of thing. If you have a mega church, like I lived very, very close to a mega church back where I used to live, and if you live in that area and you have that many people crowding into a place like that, so small and packed in together, so many people so regularly, once a week, like feeling as if they have to go and do that as if that is their duty, and then you have those same people going out into the community for the rest of that week until the next time they go back to church, that is such an issue for that community. Like the amount of, all it takes is one person in that congregation coming into contact with COVID-19 and bringing it to that church, and suddenly you could have hundreds of people newly possibly infected with that virus, spreading it out into the community. So yeah, at this point, if you are a church, especially one of the bigger ones, one of the mega churches, and you are not willing to suspend your services, like Pastor Greg Locke was very clear, that he in fact discourages people from wearing masks and encourages them to come. If you're doing that, you are irresponsible with the reach that you have. So this guy, whatever pastor that is, applaud that. Well done. Because that should be how things are done right now.
Check out this clip.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to give you a quick update as it relates to reopening our Atlanta area churches. And here's the bottom line.
And that's in Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta's definitely more of a blue dot in the middle of Georgia, but Georgia's not very progressive. So, I mean, I guess good on you.
Based on the uptick in COVID-19 cases, the results of our attendee surveys, and the experiences of churches that have already reopened, we've decided to suspend in-person adult worship services for the remainder of the year.
But then on the other extreme, you have another megachurch pastor, John MacArthur, who has recently opened up his church on July 26th.
Oh my God. You've got to be fucking with me. On what was that? July 26th?
Who has recently opened up his church on July 26th.
All right, hold up. We've got to see. Let's see. Or no, wait, where was this guy? Did he say where this guy was or what his name was so we can find out
to
where he
full
was?
capacity with no masks and no social
Oh,
distancing,
God, it pisses me
and has
off
basically
so
said, hey, the church must move. No,
Yeah,
Pastor
who was he?
John MacArthur.
John MacArthur. Who are you? Pastor John MacArthur. Let's see. Where do you reside, my friend? Let's see. Sun Valley, California. So, Sun Valley, California. COVID. Let's see. So, Sun Valley is... Let's see. Where is Sun Valley? Is Sun Valley within Los Angeles? What is Sun Valley? I'm not super well versed in California. Nope, not looking for all that. Just Sun Valley, California. Let's see. Where are you? Okay, so it's a neighborhood in Los Angeles. So Los Angeles County, 231,000 confirmed cases and 5,537 deaths. Let's see let's see if there was a spike 2 weeks after that. He said it was July 26th that they did that. So let's see. Where are we at as far as... Can't remember exactly where the best place to go for this sort of thing is. Let's just try and go to here and see if this gives us sort of like a week by week. Let's see. Let's see, Sun Valley, California COVID over time. Yeah, don't need whatever's trying to flash up here. Well, this is not being helpful. Well, it's not one to tell me, but regardless of whether there was a spike after that, which I'm pretty sure you could probably attribute directly to them if there was, this is not a place where you need to be having that many people crammed inside one building. Obviously, I think we can all pretty much agree on that. This is not the state that you want to have your community in when you are doing that sort of thing. That is not responsible. Even if it was a 100th of this, if they had 2,000 cases, that would still be irresponsible to bring that many people into that space with no social distancing and no masks. And yet...
But then on the other extreme, you have another megachurch pastor, John MacArthur, who has recently opened up his church on July 26th.
This fucking disgusts me. And I feel very bad for a lot of these people, because a lot of these people probably just trust that their church wouldn't be doing this sort of thing if it wasn't safe to do so. And if you look through here, we've got... you can't see underneath me here. There's an older gentleman. There's a lot of gray hair in this audience. You got an older gentleman here. You've got a lot of gray hair going through. This is not a very young congregation. And you are crowding them all into this space.
To full capacity with no masks and no social...
And for what? Why would you have all of these people, bring them all into one place like this, without any sort of social distancing, with no masks, when you could do this online? Everything else is being done online. School is being done online. Lots of jobs are being done online. Why can... literally all you're doing is you're singing, which most people can do at home, and then you are listening to somebody talk. If you can't do that online, then you shouldn't be doing it at all. You can't be doing this in person in the state that we are currently in. You can't be doing that.
Social distancing, and has basically said, hey, the church must move on. Now, I'm going to address MacArthur a little bit later on in this video, but I want to give you 4 considerations as to whether a church should or should not reopen during a pandemic. And the 4th consideration is the most important, so I want you to hang on to the end of this video.
Right.
Now, real quick, before I get into these, what is your opinion? Do you think a church should reopen during this time, or should they stay in a place where they're doing mostly online and limited?
All online. You should not be, there is no justification for doing any of the church services in person. You can't do it. You cannot do that and be responsible.
Capacity, let me know in the comment section below. Okay, consideration number 1, are we using wisdom in how we meet? Notice I didn't say when we meet or if we meet. You know, the Bible says, I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything.
I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything.
I have the right, a God-given right to congregate and get together.
We have a God-given right to congregate and get together.
Doesn't mean that it is wise to do that right now. It doesn't mean that it is beneficial to do that right now in the midst of a pandemic. Basically, by
Good point. Already doing better than some of the other people.
getting together and simply not wearing a mask and not paying attention to any social distancing guidelines, you're basically coming out making a bold statement and you're saying, look, I don't care what the scientists say. I don't care what the medical professionals say. We are going to defy whatever it is that they want to tell us is the best practice in terms of limiting the spread of this virus. And we are going to do it in the name of Christ because after all, we have the God-given right to do this.
Yeah, that is a lot of people's perspective on this. And it's not very often that you hear somebody actually call that out for what it is. So yeah, it's not wise to be grouping up like that. Regardless of whether you think you have a God-given right to do so, frankly, you are dumb if you are willing to do that sort of thing right now. If you are willing to say, well, it's my right to do it, so I'm going to do it regardless of what the medical consensus is, then yeah, that is an issue with you not actually thinking about what you're doing and how it might affect other people.
So this really comes down to a question, is this faith or foolishness? In other words, is it faith to just say, you know what, I am just simply going to go to church, I'm not going to social distance, I'm not going to wear my mask, and I'm just going to trust that God has got my back because I'm doing it in the name of God? Or does God say, you know what, I've given you wisdom in this area, I've given other people insight into how to limit the spread, and so it would be foolish for you to do that? You know,
yeah, again, this is not the sort of thing I expected to hear from him. And granted, he hasn't said which one is correct in his mind yet, but it seems like he's kind of leaning, at least more than anybody else, towards, yeah, that's pretty fucking stupid.
You know, I'm reminded of the story of Jesus.
Granted, he's getting that from God gave you the wisdom and gave other people the wisdom to say that, which is coming from a place of fairy tales rather than a place of facts. But as long as you are getting to the point where your fairy tales are helping you to help other people not die in a pandemic, I guess I'm willing to overlook some of it.
Jesus, whenever the enemy led him to the top of the temple, and he told Jesus, hey, if you believe you're the Son of God, why don't you jump off this temple? And he even quoted a scripture. He says, hey, God is going to make his angels protect you so that as you're jumping off this temple, you will not even dash your foot up against a stone. But what did Jesus come back and say? He said, yes, that's true, but the scriptures also say that thou shalt not put God to the test, meaning
yeah, and that's another way you can justify this through scripture. Again, you shouldn't need to justify this sort of thing through the scripture, but if that's what you need, yeah, go ahead. Don't test God. Yeah, he might protect you in your worldview, but the scriptures also say don't test him on it. So yeah, that's a great way to look at it from a scriptural perspective, because that's, I mean, not a great way to look at it because it's relying on bullshit, but if it gets you there, it gets you there, and you're in better shape than a lot of other people.
Yes, is it possible for me to jump off of this temple and God would catch me and I wouldn't hurt myself? Yes, but Jesus basically said that is stupid, because just because God could catch me doesn't mean that he necessarily will. And my friend, I see that in the same way. Could it be possible that you can go to church and you can not wear your mask and you can not social distance and you may not even get the spread? Yes, that's possible, but why put God to the test?
Yeah, fair enough.
Why defy all wisdom whenever you come together? If John MacArthur wants to have a church service with all of the people there, what is so wrong with encouraging his members to simply social distance and to wear a mask to limit the spread?
Oftentimes it boils down to people feeling as if they are being oppressed by being asked to do the simplest possible things to protect the people around them. Because a lot of these people, unfortunately, don't really care about many of the people around them. So if you're going to say, well, you need to do this to protect other people, a lot of them don't care unless it's to protect them. And it sucks, but that is just kind of the truth of it, which is disappointing. So if what you need is for a way for God to be telling you, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that, then by all means, go with it, because I would rather you get to that point through this bullshit than you do, like, say that oh god, what was it that Greg said, that they are a gag and a censorship device, and if you're willing to accept the mask, then they're gonna put a chip in you, and that's how the Antichrist is gonna know where he should get you. Oh god, yeah, I prefer this.
You know, we've seen several churches and pastors make the decision to open up their churches at full strength because they felt like people just needed to congregate. They were lonely and they wanted to spend time with.
Texas pastor accepts full responsibility for church's COVID-19 outbreak. Regrets allowing hugs. That's a really funny fucking headline right there. It sucks that so many of these people got sick, because it says, what, has sickened more than 50 of his parishioners? That does not surprise me, because if you're opening at full capacity in places where the virus is not contained, you're gonna get people sick. Regrets allowing hugs. That is kind of funny.
One another, only later on to see that many of the members in that church were contracting the COVID-19 coronavirus, and as a result, they were spreading it to other people, and some of them ultimately died. And all of those pastors said the same thing. They said, you know what? I take this on me. I regret knowing that the decision that I made could have led to the sickness or even the death of people that I love.
Again, yeah, that's a good thing. Like, do you honestly think that if half of Pastor Greg Locke's congregation got COVID from going to church and died, that he would feel bad about it? Pastor Greg Locke does not give a fuck about you, about anybody. So yeah, no, like, this is obviously would have been better if you were smart enough to not open it up in the first place, but I guess, yeah, fair enough. Take responsibility for it.
Okay, consideration number.
As long as they're realizing that they did something wrong and they are saying, yeah, we shouldn't be doing this, and encouraging other churches not to do it and encouraging their congregations to actually take it seriously. I mean, again, it's not a great way to get there. Like, it would have been nicer if you had gotten there before getting people sick and having people die. But if that's what it took to get you there, and then try and slow down the spread after that, based on your experience, sure, I guess it's better than never getting there.
2, are we valuing others above ourselves?
You see, this is one of those things where, like, this is, oh my god, like the Paul and Morgan thing, like, oh, how can, oh god, what was their thing exactly? They kept bringing it back to abortion, and, well, they say that if we don't wear a mask, we don't care about lives, but, well, I don't think you care about lives. It's like, there's a very distinct difference between those sorts of things. You are being asked to wear a mask over your face in public and to generally avoid being within 6 feet of other people. That is not a big ask as compared to carrying a pregnancy to term Like, that is not comparable in any way. But people will try to it's really funny how people will try to take the moral high ground on this sort of thing with issues like that. But they're not even willing to do the most basic sorts of things to protect the people around them. This is why I refuse to call people who are anti-abortion pro-life. These are anti-choice people. They don't give a fuck about people's lives, because so many of them prove, time and time again, they will not sacrifice anything, no matter how small, for anybody else. All they want to do is have control over other people, and that's how they get it, is by being pro-life.
Philippians chapter 2 says this: do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others.
Yeah, again, good sort of thing to be thinking at this point. God, am I agreeing with Allen Parr? Is that where we've gotten to? Where all of these other people that we've looked at are so beyond the pale that Allen Parr is the voice of reason? Really? That's where we've gotten to? Holy fuck. Good on you, Allen. Okay, keep going.
Now, John MacArthur, in his statement in terms of why he reopened his church on July 26th, said this.
Well, first of all and foremost, it's a first.
Oh boy, it's our good friend from last video, Mr. Tucker himself, doing the Tucker Carlson face.
First Amendment right. This is United States of America, and the government can't intrude in worship.
It's not a matter of whether they can. Granted, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I understand the law, granted, I'm not somebody who should really understand the law. I'm a musical theater major. So if I understand the law better than most other people, there's probably an issue there. But in times of a pandemic where like viral infection is spreading across the country and you are trying to limit that spread so that vast swaths of the population don't die, yeah, I'd say they can say, yeah, you can't have church. I'd say that's not like beyond the pale of what is allowed in the Constitution.
We stand on that amendment. The second thing that makes this so sensible is in the state of California, there are 40 million people. 8,500 of them have died with COVID. That's 0.002. So in California, you have a 99.99% chance to survive.
So because only that number of people had died in California by that point, compared to the full population of the state, he's saying that you then, by that logic, have a 99.99% chance of surviving coronavirus. Holy shit, this guy's a fucking moron.
COVID. So why would you shut down the entire state? And particularly when people are frightened and sometimes terrified that they're going to die, shut down the church.
Yeah, because if they're terrified they're going to die, the best thing to do is to gather them all up and make it more likely that they're going to die. Very good point.
Where most of the intense relationships in our society exist.
Now,
most of the intense relationships in our society exist in a church. God, like, the idea that somebody could believe that today is really laughable. Like, that they could, like, broadly say that and assume that it applies universally across, like, the majority of the country. Like, the majority of our, like, significant relationships are within the church. Yeah, this guy is not living in reality at all.
Now, let me be very, very clear about something. I love John MacArthur. I mean, that guy had a significant impact in my development as a younger Christian. I purchased 2 of his MacArthur study Bibles, marked them all up. I purchased his New Testament commentary series in print as well as on my electronic logo software program.
Okay, well, we know Allen Parr. It couldn't all be good, but I mean, it sounds like he's gonna be condemning him regardless, so Could be worse.
So let me be clear, I love John MacArthur, but in this instance, I disagree with his reasoning, because basically what it sounds like he's saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is that just because you have a 0.002% chance of dying, then it doesn't really matter if we come together because, hey, the numbers are in our favor. You will more likely recover from this rather than dying.
Yeah, that is basically what he's saying, and he's largely misrepresenting data to do so. The fact that the population is so large and then there is so many people who have died from it, that has no bearing, because that is deaths per deaths per capita, not deaths per cases, which is what actually matters. But, you know, whatever.
But the question we have to ask ourselves is, it's not so much about will I recover from this, but rather could I potentially spread this virus to someone else unknowingly because I'm asymptomatic? And the question that I need to ask myself, and you need to ask yourself, and MacArthur and all of his parishioners need to ask ourselves is, would we be okay if we were the one that unknowingly passed this virus on to somebody else and they died as a result of coming in contact with us?
You see, this is a good mindset to have. Yeah, would you be able to live with yourself if you knew that was the case? If you knew that by you not wearing a mask, you unknowingly passed coronavirus onto somebody who died from it? Would you be okay with that? Because unfortunately, I think a lot of the people, Paul and Morgan, I don't think they would care based on the way they talked about it. Greg Locke certainly wouldn't care. God, like, you saw the way he was spitting in his video just when he was so angry. And this guy was just in a Dunkin' Donuts yelling in somebody's face. So obviously he does not give half a fuck if he gets somebody else sick and they die. We should. We should. And you know what? Again, if you're a Christian and you do care, good on you. Yeah, I will happily stand with you in this regard. Well done.
You know,
it should be the bare minimum, but apparently that's not the case.
So I know some people personally who are about my age who are pastors of a church, and they had 2 children, a beautiful wife, and in 2 days after they contracted the virus, they died.
Yeah?
This thing is real. And why?
God, isn't it crazy that this is, for the most part, the first time we've had one of these people acknowledge that this virus is an actual threat. This is the 3rd video we've done on this in a week. And this is the first time that we have heard somebody actually acknowledge, yeah, this virus is a problem and we need to be vigilant and we need to actually be doing what we can to stop the spread of this. Good on you, Allen. Goddamn.
All because we want to come together as a church and not wear a mask and not socially distance from one another, all in the spirit of Christ. Is this faith or is this foolishness? So I want us all to answer this question. Will I be able to live with myself knowing that I could have done more on my part to limit the spread of this virus?
Good question, and I think a lot of people need to ask themselves this.
Consideration number 3 is huge, and that is, what message might this send about how Christians should respond to government?
All right, let's see where it goes with this.
You know, the Bible says in Romans 13, let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God.
I do think this is really laughable, but again, it's one of those things where, like, what you are getting, or what you are using to get to your conclusion is broken, but you're getting to the right conclusion anyway, which I will take over people using fairy tales to justify the wrong thing. So, I mean, again, if this is the sort of thing you need, it's like the same thing with, like, the people who say that, well, actually, the Bible doesn't condemn gay people. It's like, okay, I mean, if that's how you get to the position of not condemning gay people, yeah, I would rather you got there through actual reasoning and reality, but if you got there, you got there. I'm a utilitarian. If it begets good outcomes, I will accept it. That is better than nothing for me.
Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves.
I don't like this verse. I actually don't really like this verse at all. It's basically saying that you have to respect all authority because all authority comes from God. So rebelling against any sort of authority means that you are rebelling against God, which is just a really bad mindset to put people into. But again, in this specific sense, if it gets people, if this is what people need to get to that point where they are willing to wear a mask so that other people don't die, I'll take it.
Now, this is a very difficult passage to interpret because it's similar to the mandate for a woman or a wife to submit herself to her husband. But what if that husband is not submitting to God and therefore he is requiring her to do something that is unbiblical and causing her to go against her submission to God? Well, obviously her submission needs to be to God first rather than to her husband. But let's look at this instance. In this instance,
I mean, yeah, the whole submit to your husband thing, obviously. Don't agree with that. But, what he's saying here is basically, if your husband is not being godly, then you should be going with what God would want you to do. I don't know where exactly he's trying to go with this. I mean, again, it's all faulty, bad ways to get to the conclusions. And I think this one in particular, I think leads to some very bad conclusions most of the time. But at this point, again, coronavirus is the more significant, more direct threat to people's health. So, God, I almost don't care if this is what gets people to that point. It pisses me off that they need something like this. Like, they should just be able to, as a human being, say, yeah, I care about other people enough to do this, but if they can't and they need something like this, then I guess this has its place right now, as much as I would ordinarily. It's very similar to the whole, I don't like Democrats. I don't like Democrats at all. I obviously don't like Republicans, but I don't like the Democratic Party. But it's very hard for me to criticize the Democratic Party right now, because in doing so, a lot of people assume that that is an implicit endorsement of something else in this election that's upcoming, which we cannot afford to have. Because, yeah, they're both bad. The Republicans and the Democrats are both bad, but one of them is significantly better than the other. And I need people to know that I can't criticize the Democratic Party as hard as I want to right now, because I need as many people voting that way as possible, so that then, once we have that, we can then use that leverage to push people where they actually need to go when people's lives are not as in danger under somebody like Donald Trump. It's the same sort of thing. It's a very similar sort of situation.
We don't see the government asking the church to do something unbiblical, like marry two people who are homosexual. In that regard, I would say disregard what the government says and go with what God is saying. But
God damn it, Alan. Why do you still have to be like that? Obviously, I mean, you're not going to change. That's how you are, but
in this instance, the government is simply saying, hey, we are trying to do our part to limit the spread of this virus as quickly as possible so that we can all get back to our normal lives. And so,
you see, here's the thing, because, yeah, this guy is getting all of his perspectives from, or at least most of his perspectives very clearly from the Bible, but he's also using just basic logic and reasoning that other people don't seem to be doing. Yeah, the government is trying to put these things in place so that we can get things under control so that we can go back to normal sooner and easier. That is the whole point of this. But so many of these other people they can't get that through their minds. They think it's all some sort of government conspiracy to take control over your lives. It's fucking insane. So yeah, it's ridiculous that Allen Parr is coming off as this beacon of reason in this way amongst all the other people that are on his side. It blows my fucking mind.
So in that regard, number one, I don't see the government telling the church to do something unbiblical. And then number two, I don't see the government singling out the church to try to limit their religious freedom.
True, and they are also not doing anything unconstitutional. They cannot specifically say, if they were to say, okay, mosques have to close, but churches can stay open. That would be against the First Amendment. But saying, yeah, you cannot have religious gatherings right now across the board because we're trying to stop the spread of COVID, yeah, you are not in violation of any law there. That is not against the Constitution. They are within their rights to do that. And regardless of whether it goes against Christianity, which, again, it doesn't, you should be listening to it. There's no good reason not to be.
Because businesses are affected by this, movie theaters are affected by this, restaurants are affected by this, bowling alleys, and all sorts of other.
I don't know why they didn't all fall under the same blanket of businesses that he started with.
Places, sports, and whatnot. This is a pandemic that we are living in, and it could send the message, number one, to Christians and say, you know what? If we don't agree with something that the government tells us to do, then we have the God-given right to say, you know what? God is leading me to do something different, and therefore, because that's what my conscience says, that I'm going to do that and disregard government. But not only that, but how might this look to the outside world when you have all of these other businesses that have to adhere to the government standards of limiting the gatherings and the size of the gatherings, and yet the church says, I don't care what the government has to say, I'm going to do whatever I want to do, and even though these other businesses have to restrict themselves, we are not going to restrict ourselves. I don't know. Could that be sending a message to the outside world that we are in defiance of the government standards?
I don't know. This whole thing was sort of an argument for like optics from the Christian perspective. Like, we don't want to look like we are trying to put ourselves as more important than other businesses or other sorts of things, like other businesses and that sort of thing. I don't know. I don't really care about any of that because, again, I don't really care about the optics of the church. If the church has bad optics and it's not actively hurting people, that's fine by me. But I mean, if the good optics are, hey, let's show that we are willing to make sacrifices for the people around us, yeah, okay, then yeah, take some good optics if you're going to be one of those churches instead of one like Pastor Greg Locke.
Now, this fourth consideration, as I said earlier, is the most important one, and that is this. Could God be using this pandemic to uncover the true current spiritual condition of the church?
Oh, God. Oh, no. No, you can't do that to me, Allen. You can't say this is the most important when number 2 was, can you live with yourself if you kill other people? You can't do this. You can't say I'm the Christian, I'm the one who cares about other people, and then say that it matters more whether God's using the pandemic to expose the current condition of the church is more important than whether you are going to kill the people around you. You can't do that. Come on now. That's some bullshit. I'm not really surprised, but come on. He lulled me into like a false sense of security. I was relating to this guy. Like, yeah, thank you for using your brain, but come on.
Let me explain. So the ability for us to come together as a body of Christ and congregate every single week or twice a week, however often you come together, is a blessing, and it's a critical element of our personal spiritual growth. But
don't really care.
But I'm afraid to say that many Christians are using the church as a crutch.
Again, don't really care. Like, yeah, I'm not surprised if that is the case.
We think that church means to come to church on Sunday, if we even go at all. We raise our hands, we sing, we shout, we dance, we run around, we worship, and if we're real spiritual, we may give some money, we spend some time with our friends, and then we go back to our lives and we say we went to church or we had church. And
I mean, I'm not quite sure where he's going with this. I don't think I'm going to agree with it, but I mean, let's see.
We've been conditioned to think if we do all of these things, then therefore we have had church.
Okay, so maybe he's going, all right, my prediction now. He's going to say basically that you are, like a lot of people are saying that they have to go to church to like fulfill their religious checklist for the week, because a lot of people, that's kind of how they view their religion. Like, these are the things I have to do. So they are including church in that. So they're saying I have to go to church because if I don't, then I'm not doing what I need to do spiritually. And if his goal in this is to say, no, you can do that outside. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to put other people in danger to do that. If that's where he's going with it, then again, like, yeah, it's not great, but if that's what it takes.
But with the church now being closed, we are now forced to ask ourselves, in what way am I being the church? Because I can't go to church because my church is closed. So I want to challenge you right now, the person who's watching this video, what are some things that you have personally done since your church has been closed to be the church and fulfill God's mission and purpose and keep the kingdom agenda moving forward?
Like, again, it's one of these things where I don't agree with what he's saying here, but I have a very hard time, like, taking a hard stance and bothering to even argue against it. Because I think the ultimate outcome of this video, regardless of some of the problematic things about it, is going to be positive. And that's not something I'm used to. So I would feel weird like trying to dig in and say that this is bad or that this is more problematic than it is, because overall I think this video is going to do good. So I don't know. I almost don't really care, especially because what he's talking about is things that really only apply to people who are already religious. And I don't really, like, as somebody who isn't, obviously, as somebody who was for a long time, but I have a hard time sort of putting myself back into this to even foster any sort of, like, meaningful criticism.
Let me ask you a few questions. Have you personally hosted either an online or small group Bible study in your home? Have you found other creative ways, such as
I don't
online?
think any of this really matters.
Found in Matthew 28, or you personally strengthen your relationship?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Christian, I'm sure these are things that matter to you. And you know what? If this is what it takes for you to feel fulfilled in your spirituality while you're not going to church and not putting people in danger, then by all means, if this keeps you from going physically to church, do these things. If that's what it's going to take, do them. We'll have this conversation when it is something we can do. Like when it is a conversation we can have safely. When having the conversation is not going to then like incentivize people to go do things that are actively harmful to themselves and other people. Like that's when we'll have this conversation, because it's not worth having right now.
With Christ during all of this downtime and time you've had alone and time you've had God's permission from all the church, and what this is exposed is that whenever we do come together, we need to do a better job as church leaders to equip our members to not just come to church, but to be the church. So that
personally, I would rather that when it's safe, people just go to church and never think about their religion outside of it. Because that's ultimately going to lead to less harm, because the more ingrained people get into their religion, the more problematic it gets. But, I mean, right now, if that's what it takes to get people out of the church, then I guess do it.
if this happens again where we are not able to meet together, the church will still move on, because the church will be comprised of people that will say, okay, I can't go to church, but I know how to feed myself spiritually. I know how to get with somebody and make a disciple. I know how to share my faith with somebody. I think we need to be aggressive and intentional about preparing our members to not just come to church and not just simply to know more of the Bible, but to learn how to make disciples of all nations, teaching them how to observe the things that Jesus taught us to do.
No, again, I disagree. I think that is not what I want. I don't want religious people to be more equipped to spread their beliefs, because they're harmful beliefs. I think the best course of action, don't go to church and don't do this either. That's the best course of action for Christians to take right now. Don't go to church and don't start like ministering to people online. Don't do either, because that leads to the least harm. But again, that's not anything that's going to convince anybody who is religious that is the case. Like, it's just the virus is more important. It's not worth having this conversation, and this is not really a conversation that is worth having as somebody who is not in the church. So there's not really a whole lot to say.
So my friend, I'll leave you with this. If our churches are not able to survive, if, let's say, worst
God, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if all the churches just like decided, and they just stopped? Wouldn't that be nice?
case scenario, we're not able to come together for the next year without falling apart, then my friend, that says a lot more about how we view church. And it exposes the fact that we see church as a place that we go to rather than something that we do and who we are. So I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think? Is it wise to reopen churches during this time in the midst of a pandemic, or should we continue to wait? I'd love to hear from you. Leave it in the comment section below. If you found
All right. Well, I mean, overall, like in any normal time, not a great message. Not a great message at all. Like in any normal time, I would just say, yeah, this is all religious bullshit, write it off. But in the times that we are in right now, where so many people who are religious are using their religion as like some sort of justification for why they shouldn't be wearing a mask, and they shouldn't be trying to keep other people safe, and they should be gathering in massive groups to go to church. Like, in these crazy fucking times that make Allen Parr seem like the reasonable one, this is a good video. Like, this will do more good than harm, I think. At least in the short term, and in the short term is where there is the most direct danger. So, yeah, like, I don't think I will ever find another video that I agree with Allen Parr on anything with. But from what I've seen from other people, this is probably the best, like, religious coronavirus video I've seen. So, good job, Allen. Good job.